Hi everyone, and welcome to another video on the Anxiety Guy YouTube channel. Thank you for being a subscriber. Now, Jill asks the very powerful and important question of what separates people who moved on with their life from the people who continue to cope with chronic stress and anxiety. And this question I get all the time. And people ask me, Dennis, what separates, what kind of characteristics, what are some people that are overcoming anxiety doing that's different than people who continue to cope? And I want to give you guys 5 really powerful reasons for why people move on past their anxiety, move on onto the dreams and the goals that they have for their lives and different aspects of their lives. And let's start to tackle them right away, guys, so we can get on the road to recovery. Now, the first one is that they gain intellectual insight, and that means that they have this new insight that they can actually think something different than what they've been accustomed to. So their beliefs, their values, their experiences, all these things lead them to create a checklist. Everybody in this world has a checklist for everything, right? If you're looking for that perfect spouse, you've got a certain checklist as far as what you want that spouse to have, right? And how it affects you. If you want to gain a new relationship with a stranger, whatever it may be, you have a certain checklist as far as, you know, what kind of friends you're going to accept and what friends you're not going to accept. So everybody's got this certain checklist. Now, let's say you're going through your life and someone goes against your checklist. Now, what starts to happen? Automatically, what starts to happen is we start to feel like, man, that's bad, right? That's not right. But a lot of people gain this intellectual insight and they go, well, I have this checklist, I have my beliefs, I have my values, but there might be a different way to think in this situation. Right? And once they actually come to grips with that new empowering belief, everything starts to change. Everything starts to snowball. When you recognize the fact that there's another way to do something, there's another way to think when it comes to a certain subject, everything starts to change. You know, the big difference is that so many people who struggle with anxiety believe that things happen to them. Whereas people who've overcome their anxiety have learned that there's a certain chain of events that causes the stress, that causes the anxiety. And that's powerful. It's huge. It's tremendous. When you recognize this, everything changes, right? I'm not living a life of just effect, reacting to things. Things are not happening to me. I am creating what's happening to me through my thoughts, through my belief systems, through my patterns. And just because I've had experiences in the past that have led me to move towards this idea of everything must continue to be familiar, a lot of these people the people that have overcome anxiety tend to remove themselves from that bubble. That bubble of just because I've had an experience in the past, it doesn't mean that I will believe that this experience will run my patterns in the future. So they gain intellectual insight, which means, again, that there's a new way to do something, a new way to think, right? Depending on the situation. So that's just huge for people that recover compared to people that cope. The second one is that they realize that their core beliefs ingrained in their unconscious are what's creating their reality. So they recognize that consciously there's a lot of things you can do, right? You can take yourself out of a certain environment. We've gone through these 6 stages in another video, guys, so look for that. They take themselves out of their environment. They change their behaviors. They add new skills and abilities. But a lot of times these first 3 don't really get to the core issue. You can take yourself out of the bar, but you can continue to be a drinker, someone who is an alcoholic. You can change your behavior. and, you know, come up with new behaviors, but you can still be that alcoholic, that person you think you are. You can add new skills and abilities to your life, but same thing, you're back in that circle. What we must do is recognize that there's a certain bunch of core beliefs that are running our physical reality. And until we start to identify the identity, the person that we think we are, we can't change anything. We can't change those limiting beliefs. We can't change our values. We can't change anything. And so many times, I mean, think about these two terms, right? I am a procrastinator, right? Or I procrastinate. You know, how do those two terms make you feel? I am a procrastinator is basically an identity statement. It is what you are. I am anxiety, right? Unconsciously, this is what people do. They continue to tell themselves that I am anxiety. And it doesn't matter what aspect of their life it is, they continue to stay in line with who they think they are. Now, if I said to myself, I procrastinate, you know, that's just something I could do from time to time, right? Look at the words that I'm using and notice how powerful they are. One leads you in one direction to think in one way, and another one guides you in another direction, and you think a totally different way. So a lot of these people recognize that their core beliefs are running their reality. Now, the third one is that they gain emotional insight. The people that have recovered gain emotional insight. They recognize that not only is there a new thought process that they can engage in, but now that thought process actually feels good, right? This emotional insight, it's not only about I must think a certain way, but now they're emotionally attached to the new way of thinking, right? And you can always go, you know what, I can gain intellectual insight, I can, and that's the first step, is just recognizing that there's a different way of doing something, a different way of thinking towards something. But a lot of times people don't get that emotional insight, that feeling that, you know what, this really is the way to recovery. This really is the direction I need to go in order for me to get to where I want to go in my life. So these people gain emotional insight and they go, yep, I can think this way and it feels good, right? And it's huge, it's life-changing. Number 4 is they recognize their mental filters, right? A lot of people mistakenly go about life putting the same lenses on for every situation of their life. So they see everything in one direct way, and they're not very flexible in their beliefs. They're always consistent with what fits, what they already know and think is correct, right? And they're not accustomed to being open-minded, to being flexible. So when we start to look at things in a different way, when we start to change the lenses that we put on, depending on the situation, depending on what feels like it's good and what feels like it's not so good, then we start to create that change. So understand that you can look at something differently than what your thoughts are telling you, right? And that goes back to just recognizing, you know, again, what sort of lenses am I using? What sort of mental filters am I using in this situation? Does it feel good? Is it right for this situation? Or must I be looking at this in a different way? Is there a different mental filter that I can be moving towards, that I could be using, that will help me in this situation? Number 5 is they catch their reflexive thoughts. And I've made a powerful video on this earlier, guys, on reflexive thoughts. And reflexive thoughts are basically these embedded, automatic thoughts that basically are underlying and unconscious. They pop their head out without you even being conscious about it, and they run your patterns. A lot of people, for example, who go through panic attacks go, you know, I had a panic attack out of the blue, Dennis. Why does this stuff keep happening to me? So I go, you know what? That's not happening out of the blue. You have reflexive thoughts embedded deeply ingrained thoughts that are currently running those patterns. And again, living in a world of cause and effect. There's a cause for every effect. So what they do is they catch their reflexive thoughts and they go, well, hold on. I caught that thought, and the quicker I stop the pattern, the faster I'll be able to take myself out of this anxiousness that I'm moving towards, right? And people ask me, Dennis, like, do you still get anxious? Do you still feel stressed? And I always tell them, of course I do. You know, I'm human. It's hardwired in me, it's hardwired in you. It's within us, our ancestors, you know, all of us. We had this ingrained in us from birth, right? There's a lot of fears that we learned, but there are fears that we've come to this world with, right? Health anxiety in a big part is not your fault. Health anxiety in a big part is definitely not your fault, but you are responsible for your recovery, and that's the important part. A lot of people beat themselves up for having anxiety, for having stress, for feeling like they're having panic attacks and such, but a lot of these guys they start with the building blocks of our identity, which are between the ages of 0 and 7, right? And as we move between those ages, we start to get these core beliefs that stick with us towards adulthood, right? And a lot of times we beat ourselves up for feeling these things, but you can't beat yourself up for something that you can't recognize, right? These things are just automatic in your head right now. So back to reflexive thoughts though, and I've made a video on this, it's powerful, go check it out. First, what conscious people do, people that want change, people that are willing to put in the time, people that are willing to put in the effort, people that are willing to be unfamiliar as they move towards their goals for a short amount of time, they catch their thoughts. As soon as they're in the shopping mall, a reflexive thought comes up. And that reflexive thought in an instant says, there's too many people. In our experience, Dennis, and that's your subconscious mind talking to you. Hey, Dennis, we've been in this situation before. Be careful and make sure that you handle this really calmly, right? And you're going, well, okay, well, give me the tools. And you don't have the tools. So a reflexive thought comes up, you start to panic, but automatically what you do this time is you catch it and you go, hold on, what kind of evidence is there behind this reflexive automatic thought? Yes, I've had a panic attack once before, but is that powerful enough for me to think it's going to happen again? Right? Or is there a new, empowering, evidence-based belief that I can believe in this situation? Number one, no one's ever died from a panic attack. No one's ever had a heart attack from a panic attack. No one's ever died from anxiety. No, in my entire life, and we're talking about that moment again, you're in the mall. In my entire life, I've never seen someone drop dead in a mall because there was too many people around them. Look at all the evidence you have to not fight against, but to replace that reflexive, panicky, anxious thought that you have, right? So you start to move towards this new evidence, this new empowering belief, and automatically your life starts to go in a different way. And remember that in our minds, we always do 3 different things with information. When we get the information, we either delete it, we distort it, which means we change it around, we mold it, or we generalize. Right? So any information that we get, we either delete it, distort it, or generalize that information, depending on our values and experiences. So don't beat yourself up over this stuff. Don't beat yourself up over reflexive thoughts. They are embedded. They are deep within. A thought cannot be pushed away, right? And, oh, I hope I don't think that thought, right? It's too powerful. It's just too powerful. And the only way to go about it is to replace it with an evidence-based empowering thought. And this 3-step process, guys, changed my life. It did. But it takes effort. It takes commitment. And everybody goes, well, I'm going to the gym today. I'm going to be physical and build muscle. Well, that's fantastic. I love that you guys are being physical and taking care of your physical body, which in turn helps your mental health. But how much mental muscle are you actually working on? How much time are you spending on yourself to write down all the instances that caused you stress in the past, that caused you anxiousness, and what are you doing to change those things, right? And it's time to build that mental muscle, guys, not just the physical muscle. And when you start to build mental muscle, you also start to build spiritual muscle. And then in that moment, we start to move towards our true self and not our critical voice. So I know this video is going to help you guys. Share it with others, please, and help somebody else as they're suffering from anxiety. I know these 5 steps are going to make a change in other people's lives, so it's a fantastic share. Subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Remember, you are more than anxiety. Bye, guys.